Hello everyone, today I'm doing something a little bit different. I wanted to make a video answering a question that I get pretty often, which is how should I spec my Espers, or how did you spec your Espers, etc. So I'm going to be going over some suggested builds for Espers. Now keep in mind these are just my personal feelings. There is no right answer on how to spec your Espers, but if you want to know how I plan to do my Espers, this is the way to do it. So for Siren, I'm going to keep her at level 8 for 3-star, because level 8 is enough to get the only good thing she really offers, which is the Dispel ability, the Bar Water ability, and an additional 20% to Water Resist. That brings the Water Resist from equipping Siren up to 70%. There's not really much else that Siren offers, so I would suggest keeping her at level 8 and saving your super sight for more important Espers. But if you're hardcore and you leveled her like all the way to 60, then you could get like a reflection boost, analyze. There's not really much else to take. So Siren, like I said, keep her low level. She's probably one of the weakest Espers we have. Get a little bit of water resist, because that is one good thing she's good for, and skip her for now. Now, Ifrit, you want to bring to level 44. That will give you the Beast Killers and the Plant Killers, and those are two somewhat common races. Like, plants are the Malboro, Antonella bosses. I'm not sure if there's any more like big bosses coming that are plants, but Beast is the big one. Like, Beast are all over the place. And really, there's not too much else Ifrit offers anyway. Now you could, for example, level him all the way to 60, but you really won't gain much past 44. Like, you'll notice that you get 73 attack for having him at level 44. If you go all the way to 60, that goes to 78. So you're spending like 400 more super sight to get 6 more attack points. Do it eventually, but that's like low priority. Get to 44, get all those killers, and then leave Ifrit there. Now, one thing Ifrit does have is the Provoke ability. You can respec him for that if you'd rather use Ifrit instead of Golem for a fight, but I don't really see any scenario that ever be useful over Golem. So I would suggest you just ignore the Provoke ability for Ifrit. Now for Shiva, she offers a few good utility abilities. Level 44 is also enough to get all the good Shiva stuff. Now I recommend for Shiva you go for Offensive Freeze, Defensive Freeze, and Stop Through. Now Offensive Freeze is a 40% attack and magic break, and Defensive Freeze is a 40% defense and spirit break. Now this is useful because these allow anyone to be a somewhat okay breaker. It's not the best, 40% is pretty low these days, but still, sometimes 40% is all you need. And the flexibility to equip that on any unit is really nice. Now, Stop Through is a 50% chance to resist Stop. Now, you can't rely on this in trials for your units. It's good in the arena, obviously, but the big thing this one is good for is Mercenary Ramza. It gives him Stop immunity if he's wearing his Trust Mastery, because he has 50% innate, and this brings him up to 100%. Now Shiva, if you were to level her all the way to 60, you get a few extra points. What you could do is you could go for like Barb Lazara, maybe Libra for some utility, and that pretty much caps you out on points. It gives you a resist buff, but even so, excuse me, I would keep her at 44 because that gives you all the good things. And if you're not worried about the stop resist, for example, if you don't even have Mercenary Ramza, you could skip that and keep her at like level 20 something and still get both the breaks. Now for Golem, level 39 gets you all the good stuff. Now the way I choose to go Golem is full tank build. Now I get the hit point 10%, the defense 10%, the provoke ability, and one of the reflection boost. Unfortunately, even at 60, you can't afford both the reflection boost with this setup. But this gives you like 83 defense, 104 hit points, plus 10% on top of that, depending on the unit it's equipped to. So this is really good for your tank, or maybe someone that just wants to be more survivable, etc. Once you eventually go all the way to 60 for Golem, I recommend you grab these two resistance nodes, and that will bring his equipped resistance to 70% Earth, which is useful on a few fights. Now you'll notice I completely ignored the killer abilities, because for one thing, bug and stone monsters are pretty rare, but also Golem is the best tank Esper. So I really didn't want to, take some DPS abilities for, maybe 2 trial fights a year, and then kind of gimp your best tank Esper, which is good for every trial fight. So I recommend you ignore these. For the very rare bug or stone boss, you might take a few extra turns to kill him, but that's no problem. Something else I want to point out is the auto cover ability. I recommend you never ever spec this. You might find it useful in the arena, but this ability will mess you up so many times in trial fights, and you just don't want any part of that. Never spec auto cover. But there's the Golem build you can do. Next up would be Ramu. Now he gets his good stuff at level 34. And what I chose for him was the magical killers for stone and demon, as well as the dispel ability. Excuse me. That gives level 34 for him, gets the good stuff for Ramu, which is, demon is a very common race. Stone's a little rare, but you may as well grab it. Demon's all over the place. That's the build I choose. Now, once you eventually level Ramu to 60, something you can grab would be some extra stuff like Bar Thundara over here. That gives you the resist buff. You can get Defaithna, which means you can put Ramu on like your healer, and it gives your healer the ability to cure magic breaks from your team. Now something to point out is you can drop both of these and get Training Prajna, and still maintain the good killers and the dispel ability. That gives you 50% bonus to experience for the equipped unit. But the thing is, it doesn't work on Cactuars, and Cactuars are the most common way to level units. Now, if you do utilize the Chamber of Experience and the Vortex pretty often, it might be worth it to you. It's not bad. You lose Defaithna and Bar Thundara, but those are pretty, specialized skills anyway, so you don't lose that much getting Training Prajna on Ramu. It's up to you, whichever you prefer. Now, Diablos only really has one spec, and that would be level 57. Level 57, and that gets you both human killers and both demon killers. Humans and demons are by far the most common race we fight in the game. So that'll give you tons and tons of use for, the killer abilities. And even if you didn't take those, there's really nothing else that Diablos offers that's good. So I recommend level 57 on him and grab both of those killers. There's really, not much debate on that. He only has one good thing. If you go to level 60, you only gain a few more points. You can't really afford anything else. Like the Mug ability is the only thing that you can really afford, and you're out of points. Mug will probably never be used. If you want to steal, bring Zahn. But, sorry, still have kind of a cold. There's not much else for Diablos. So 57, both the killers, and be done with him. Now Carbuncle at level 43, I like this build. I choose Auto Limit, Hit Point 10%, and Spirit 10%. And you also get Dispel on the way to Auto Limit. Now that makes him a really good Esper for your healers. Lots of hit points, lots of spirit, and then Auto Limit is great for all the healers, like Ayaka, Fina, Folka. All of them really like their limit burst as often as possible. Now once you eventually level Carbuncle to 60 in the future, you can get one of the 90% resist buffs, but you can only afford one of them. So you can get ice, you can get 90% or 70%, fire, or 70% lightning resist, or you could get 50% to all three. I would probably recommend 50% to all three. More flexibility. It's probably going to find more use to use one of them as opposed to the amount of times you only use one of them, but for 20% higher. But it's really up to you. Now he does have Spirit Killer 50% for magic or is that's melee? But you're not really going to ever put Carbuncle on a DPS unit, so I would just ignore that and keep him as a really good healer Esper. Now for Odin, he's got a few different builds. The one I personally chose was level 51, and that gives you Finger Snap, which is another source of Dispel. Dispel is great. Both Dragon Killers, Undead Killer, and both hit point 10% nodes for a total of 20% hit points. That makes him very flexible. He can go on a DPS and add some decent DPS stats as well as some survival. He can go on your tank, which gives you 20% more hit points, and gives your tank the Dispel ability, or Finger Snap. The alternative, and once you bring Odin to 60, you really can't afford anything else good. You can take like Lance, and that uses up all your points. Now, another option for Odin is to go really specialized, and instead of taking like all of this, you can go for like Katana spec, and you can get like both the reflection boost, and that will give him 112 attack plus 20% if you're using the Katana. Or you can go for the spear boost, and that'll give you a lot of attack plus 20% with spears. I personally did not choose these because they're really specialized, but if you've got like a spear user or a katana user you really like and you want all the attack possible, that's fine for Odin. Because dragons are pretty uncommon anyway, and undead is not that common either, even though there are, a few dragons and undead, more than stones, for example. But either way, once Axstar comes out, I personally probably will respec mine and go for katana build. But for the moment, mine is spec'd into hit points for more utility. Next up is Titan. I recommend you keep Titan at level 1. He doesn't really bring anything too special. He's got no killers. He's got nothing, really outstanding. And level 1 can get you both reflection boost to increase the stats a little bit in case you equip him for like the stone immunity or the earth resist. Now, if you, for example, level Titan all the way to 60 someday, you've got really two choices from here. You can go for Comrade and Barstonga. That gives you enough points. That gives you a stone resist buff. And Comrade is a buff that increases your attack by 60%, just auto cast at the start of every battle. It's convenient for like story mode farming or just item world, etc. It buffs the unit's attack passively by 60% for the first 2 turns. The other option is to go for Competitive Spirit, which is a 40% or 30% chance to ignore death damage if your health is on 40% once per life. Competitive Spirit is pretty useful. It's probably more useful than Comrade, honestly. Which one you go for is up to you. But overall, Titan's not that useful. I recommend you keep him at level 1, save your Super Sight for better Espers, and level him far in the future when you've got just an excess Super Sight. Now, Lakshmi, on the other hand, is very important. I recommend you get her to level 44 as one of the first Espers you level, because that gives you Unstoppable Protection and Charming Protection. Charming Protection is a buff that you cast, and it gives your entire team immunity to charm for 3 turns. And then this one gives your team immunity to stop for 3 turns. Now, people say like, oh, I've got like Mystia or Chow, and they can give my team stop immunity, which is true. But sometimes like your tank or your unit is either dead or busy, or your team got dispelled, and you need to put up both cover and stop immunity at the same time. So it's really good to be able to put Lakshmi on like a support unit, so they always have these buffs available. And you also get Petrify, Sleep, and Confusion immunity along the way as well. Now, if you eventually take her to level 60, you can add a few more utility things like Demonic Whispers, Libra, Mediguard. That's most of your points right there. She doesn't have too much else useful outside of these resistance buffs. I would keep her at 44 and just leave it there for a long time. Next up is Tetra Sylphie. I took mine to 57, and that gives you both the bird killers as well as 5% physical evasion that stacks with all your gear. That's the only thing she really offers that are useful in my opinion, so I went for that with Tetra, and 57 gets both. If you go to 60, you really don't get enough points for anything else. Like you can grab the arrow spell for a source of wind damage for missions, but that's really, all that Tetra offers. Now, if you just hate evasion, you never want to use evasion, you can drop evasion, and then you can afford everything at like level 15, or maybe even less, maybe like level 1. No, level 5, 6. There you go. So level 6 is enough for the killers if you wanted just the bare minimum. Of course, if you go all the way to 57, you can get the killer and the evasion, which is expensive and it'll take a while, but eventually this is the final build I recommend for Tetra Sylphie. Next up is Behemoth. He's level 1. He's real simple. I recommend you get Magic and Spirit maxed out for Behemoth because that increases his summon damage the most, and then attack because it gives a decent amount of attack, 64 to your units. It's not that big of a deal either way. He's got a very limited build, so Behemoth level 1. Someday we can do more on him, but for now that's all you can do. Now Fenrir at level 34, I chose this build. This gives you 10% magic, 10% attack, and 1 reflection node. You unfortunately cannot afford both of them, even at level 60. You're like 10 points short, which is kind of funny. But this gives you the best build for hybrids, like Frievia, Kurasame, etc. Now, if you eventually take Fenrir all the way to level 60, what I would do is I would grab 10% more Dark Resist, and then Snowfang's, Snow Wolf Fang or Ice Howl for missions that gives you a source of ice damage, a source of dark damage, and a little bit of dark resist. And that's the build I would do for Fenrir at level 60. Now, of course, you wanted to specialize, like you wanted as much magic as possible. You could drop these, and you could go for both reflection boost by dropping the attack boost, or you could go for the attack boost and drop the magic boost and keep both reflections. That's the most possible like attack or magic stat, but unfortunately you can't afford both. And I think the flexibility to have magic and attack, so it's good on a mage or a DPS, and especially hybrids, is really good for Fenrir. Now Leviathan I took to 27, which gives you this spec. It gets Spirit Killers, both of them, including the plus, and it gives Violent Current. Violent Current is a physical attack that hits twice with dual wield, and it's perfectly chained with Flood. Now, the Flood family is kind of limited right now, but there are more units that come later on. For example, CG Nicole gets Flood, which is a great to be able to chain with your support unit. Dark Mage Golbez chains with Flood pretty far into the future. And some units currently, Sirs, Seaside Nicole, Dark Fina, although no one really uses her in a team. Lulu was just upgraded and she has lots of Flood abilities. Seaside Nicole, Riku if you enhanced her. But I like Violent Current. Now, once you bring Leviathan to 60, you can afford a few more things like 10% wind resist, maybe Osmos, and that maxes out your points for Leviathan. Now, you'll notice I completely ignore the Aqua Killers. You can't afford those with Violent Current. And Aqua is another one of those races that is pretty rare. Alferg, the 12th Chamber of Arm boss, is aquatic. The Ultros trial coming up in about 3 months is aquatic. So there are some big name aquatic bosses. And if you really wanted, you could, unspec these. And then you could go for, you can actually afford, even at level 60, you can afford both killers. Which is another spec too. If you don't care about Violent Current, chaining with Flood, you can drop that. And if you did, I recommend you go for both the killers. Either choice is good. Another option with Leviathan is drop all the killers entirely and go for pure summon damage, which for Leviathan means getting both the evocation nodes and raising Leviathan's spirit and his passive stats as high as you can get, which would be this build. This is all your points. This is going all in for Leviathan's summon damage, because he hits really hard when summoned. He's the hardest hitting Esper when summoned. And he even has like a special item like CG Nicole's Super Trust Mastery. Once he releases, increases Leviathan's damage by 75% on top of that. So if you really like summoners, you can go for this build for Leviathan. You lose the killers, you lose the chaining, but this will make him hit really hard when summoned by a summoner, or even anybody, but especially with summoners. And then next month when CG Nicole's Super Trust Mastery comes out, for those of you that pulled 4 of him or 8 of him if you want to dual wield it for even more bonus, you can make Leviathan into a competitive damage when summoned. It's kind of nice, you know. He's got a few really good builds. Next up is Phoenix. At level 47, Phoenix will give you a Phoenix Guard and both the Undead Killers. I recommend this for your Phoenix deck at 47 and then stop. Phoenix Guard is an ability that you can give to anyone and they can auto re-raise themselves. It's only for themselves, you can't cast it on others, but you can give this to like your tank, your supports, and they can re-raise themselves. Or another great option for this is putting this on a passive provoker. They spend every turn just re-raising themselves, then they passively provoke, get themselves killed, they re-raise, and the rest of your team doesn't need to babysit them. They're self-sufficient by re-raising themselves every turn. Like Sea Card or something, or Snow is a great option for that. But just, being able to re-raise anyone with your Esper is really good. And then the Undead Killer is good as well. Now, once you eventually bring him to 60, I recommend you go for Auto HP Recovery for a little bit of free healing, and Auto Med. Auto Med is pretty useful. It automatically it automatically cures your statuses with items. So, for example, if you can't afford like ribbons and stuff, and a boss uses AOE blind, if you put your DPS on Phoenix and put some like eye drops in your item capacity, you'll automatically cure blind for free every time you're blinded, which is really kind of convenient. Auto cure statuses, and as according to the wiki, it doesn't count. It can't be disabled. It'll always work. So it's pretty useful. But that's pretty much the only good build, in my opinion, for Phoenix. There's not much else good. You can get more resistances and stuff, but I recommend the Killers and Phoenix Guard. Now we're going to skip Alexander for the moment. Anima is still only a 2-star Esper, so he doesn't have a whole lot of options. I recommend you get Auto Limit, because that's always useful. And then Osmos, because it's probably the most useful ability that he offers. Like Dark is worthless, this is worthless, this is bad. There you go. So that's really the only viable spec for Anima 2-star. And he's a 2-star Esper, he's really cheap to level. Just level him, grab Auto Limit, and be done. Now, also Alexander is still a 2-star Esper, but his 3-star does come out pretty soon, probably. But for now, I would grab Dispel and Machine Killer, and I would save the rest of your points until he's 3-star release, because by saving the points, you don't have to worry about wasting the Lapis to respec him for his 3-star later, because you're going to want these even on his 3-star form. So get Dispel, get Machine Killer, and bank the rest. He does teach passive magic cover, but just like Golem, you never want to spec into that, because passive cover it'll go off when you don't want it to, and it'll cover the wrong person, it'll wipe your team during a trial. Never spec into passive covers. And eventually, when Alexander's 3-star comes out, let's swap this to the Japanese version. Alexander's 3-star, we'll take Dispel and Machine Killer. For his 3-star, when you level it up, you want to level the 3-star version to 27. And that'll give you enough points to go for the Machine Killer Plus. As you see, that'll be just enough points. And that's the build I would do for 3-star Alexander level 27. That gets you everything good. He doesn't really offer much else if you level him past that. But once you do bring Alexander to level 60, you can get like a reflection boost for a little bit of bonus stats. But, I mean, it's so expensive to do that, I wouldn't bother until you're finished leveling all the other Espers. But that's the build I would go to for 3-star Alexander. Now, just to recap what we've gone over, the priority for leveling the Espers, I would go for the core Espers of Lakshmi, Golem, and Carbuncle as the first ones you focus on, because those are going to be used on almost every single trial fight. Lakshmi is the most important, because that gives you the ability to give charm and stop immunity to your entire team. And then Golem is going to be on your tank almost always. It's the best tank Esper by a huge amount. And Carbuncle is really good for your healer or your support. It just needs a little bit more spirit and hit points, or it's good on your magic tank as well. And then, of course, Carbuncle gets auto limit as well. After you level those, I would focus on Diablos, Ifrit, and Ramu, because those give the most common killer abilities. Diablos is Demon and Human Killer. Ifrit is Beast Killer, is the most important one. Plants are, somewhat common, not really. And then Ramu gives Magical Demon Killer, which is a second source of Demon Killer for your mages. After that, I would level the utility Espers, which is, Shiva, Phoenix, Fenrir, Leviathan, Tetra, Odin, Behemoth, Alexander. There's no, big priority on this. Maybe Odin and Phoenix would be probably the most commonly used ones. Shiva is good for the breaks. But, I would always use your special magicites. I would color match for leveling me. Like Shiva, I would only level with violet. I would only level, Fenrir with black and I think black and violet. Tetra with green. I wouldn't, speed level these, but level them at your pace. And then low priority would be Anima, Siren, and Titan. Those just don't bring anything worth it. I would leave them at level 1, level 8, and just leave them alone. So hopefully this has been informative. I get asked the question pretty often. How do you level your Espers? What do you recommend? And here you go. This is what I would recommend. For these levels, and level here and then stop. Don't level past this point because you get very minimal gains past these breakpoints. Once all your Espers are leveled to the proper level, then I would go back and start leveling them from this all the way to the level cap. Alright, hope this has been helpful. I will see y'all next time.